Welcome to the iNetrepreneur Radio Show. We are so honored to bring you your host, the ultimate celebritypreneur, connecting businesses and celebrities worldwide. Winner of the Networking Organization of the Year, best-selling author, magazine publisher, trainer, and owner and founder of Network Together and the iNetrepreneur Media Network from magazines, TV, and radio network. We're excited to bring you your host, Mr. Robert W. Jones.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the iNetrepreneur Network radio show. And I'm your host, Robert W. Jones. And yes, you know, some people think it's wow. Nope, it's Robert Wesley Jones. That is my given name. And actually, I'm a junior. And just recently, I sent off for my birth certificate because, you know, quite frankly, I wanted to make sure I'm who I think I am. So, you know, again, welcome to the show. And I'm just glad you're here with us today. I have some amazing and exciting news. The #1 international best-selling book and book series, 365 Days of Abundance Quotes, which will be coming out. It's coming out, everyone. Oh my God, I'm so excited. We're looking at getting it to be launched before the end of this year so we can celebrate 2025 in the full glory that it should be celebrated with. So again, that's The Art of Connection, 365 Days of Abundance Quotes by entrepreneurs, business owners, and influencers. Look for it at a store near you quickly. Well, maybe not at Kmart. They don't exist anymore, but please look for it at a store near you that says book before it. Also, please go to Facebook, YouTube, you know, like us, love us, send a shout out, celebrate us. You know, we love your likes, I like to say, and let us know you're out there, and please bookmark us so you can get more information on who we are and what we do. Also, we publish 2 magazines. One is the iNetrepreneur Network, iNetrepreneur magazine, and also the Contemporary Women magazine. You can go to the respective websites and sign up for a subscription there. We produce those magazines quarterly. And if you're looking to either sponsor or contribute an article, please come see me. I would love to have you in that magazine. Also, you can go to ntevents.net. That's ntevents.net. There you can find our chapter meetings, you know, our chapter events, our author classes, pop-up events, summits, radio shows, and so much more. We put on over 1,000 meetings. I can't even believe I say this. When I say it, it seems almost overwhelming. We put on over 1,000 meetings and events every year in 20 different countries. So, you know, please come check us out at ntevents.net. You can see a schedule of what we do right there. And so what I'd like to do is I'm going to bring on one of my favorite personalities to the show. You can't beat him, so I had to join him, Mr. John Verrico. Hi, John.
So great to see you.
Oh, it's so great to see you. Again, I'm with John Verrico. He's the owner and founder of Share Your Fire. He can be reached at johnverrico.com or call him at 240-257-6373. And John, you know what? I always have to have you back because I know when you come back, you get to share your fire with us. And how are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. You know, if we're any better, I have to be twins to enjoy it.
I know. You know, one of the things that I found when we first met, it was like, I always like to say it's magic at first sight. And, you know, to have the friendship that has evolved over the last almost 3 years now, you know, I used to think that you couldn't find relationships like that. And quite frankly, I think, you know, I was looking at things wrong. I wasn't giving myself the context to find those right relationships. I wasn't providing the right vehicle to find those right relationships. And I was telling Sylvia, who's going to be coming on a little bit later, you know, I've found better relationships in the last 5 years than I've had in quite frankly, the last 35 years of my life. And, you know, I blame you for that. You know, I thank you for that. And I'm so glad, I'm so glad about that. You know, what role, you know, as you've left really the Navy career that you had and you're going into the world of entrepreneurship, you know, what role do relationships have and impact your life at this time?
You know, relationships are really what life is all about. I mean, we're we're tribal by nature. I mean, we are designed to live in a community. And so often people get a tendency to focus on their own selves and their own success, and they forget that there's this whole world out there. You know, Robert, when you first reached out to me, you called me to try to tell me about this Art of Connection book series that you were working on, and that you had an opportunity for an author, you know, for authors to come in and be part of this book. And we had booked one of those, you know, traditional 15-minute discovery calls.
Mhm.
And when we started chatting, we didn't start talking about the book. We didn't start talking about a sales pitch or a funnel or anything else. We just started chatting and related on a human to human level. So 45 minutes into the call, and I had no idea why you were calling, but 45 minutes into the call, I finally said to you, Robert, why did you call me? And he goes, oh yeah, I got this book thing. And this is, you know, but that's what caused the bond. And of course, you know, yeah, the business did follow ultimately, but that's not what life is about. I tell people all the time, you know, you go to networking events, don't go there to sell, go there to meet people.
Yeah.
And that's what it's about. I mean, it's that human to human connection
Well, you know,
that we thrive on.
yeah, I was in the Marines for 6 years. After that, I did a couple of missionary tours, and I landed in the state of Arizona, of all places. I thought I was going to go somewhere exotic, but I landed in Arizona, and I've been, in the heat on and off ever since. And I think about my background more as a programmer. And, for me, I didn't really put too much stock into relationships or friendships, because it seemed like, my life up to that point was very, mission driven, church mission, programming, you're on a mission. When you're in the Marines, it's always a mission. And so it was always the activities that I found myself a part of. But it wasn't until later in life where I found, if I just surrounded myself with the mission all the time, I was tending to grow older, and I could see around me that I was traveling alone. And, as I found that I've been building the relationships, quite frankly, they say he who travels, alone travels fastest, and in those who travel, with others travel the farthest. I found that that's not necessarily correct. I found that he or she who travels, with others travels faster and farther. Would you agree with that, John? Or, do you have a different spin on that?
You know what? It's not always about being the fastest or going the furthest. It's enjoying the journey itself. And so, but I do agree that you do go further and you do get there faster when you work together, or when you are just together. But overall, I focus on the journey itself, and the sharing of the experience, because, every experience is that much better when it's shared with someone else.
Well, and I think it's even that much better when it's shared with someone else that actually cares about.
Well, yeah, that helps, right?
That might be a part of it as well.
That's a really good point. Robert, I was in. You mentioned briefly that I was in the Navy, and I was, and then I spent 30 years after that in government service, and I just finally retired from that. But that whole thing, again, just like you, it was mission driven. It was, there were goals to be achieved. And what I realized, that to me, it wasn't the outcome of the mission that was the most important thing to me. It was making sure that the others who were going through this experience with me were also achieving that success and surviving in the tough times.
Yeah. And I'll tell you this. One of the things I found is many times as an entrepreneur, you have a lot of time alone. And I say that entrepreneurs don't necessarily fail because they don't have the time, talent, resources, or energy. They tend to fail because they fail because of the loneliness. And one of the things that I found through connecting and networking, establishing and having great relationships is one, it keeps me, grounded. Two, it keeps me thriving in my social energy, and three, we're able to ideate and synergize in such a way that I can't do that with the walls in my office. And and that's one of the things that I found with you. If I need to make that call, or I'm having trouble, or if I just sometimes need a vent, one of the things that great relationships do, and I think every business owner needs, is they need that bucket to vent into, or they need that blanket to just have comfort with, or sometimes we even need a little kick in the butt every once in a while. And I think that that's what makes a great business relationship. And what's really funny is I used to, there's this saying that says, don't go in business, with your friends. And I found in my life that's true. What I found is go into business and you'll end up making and finding friends, which happen to be maybe as good or even better, because you really get to know someone that way. Tell me a little bit about how it's been going so far in the last year or so with you and your business. And what are some of the things that you're looking forward to for 2025?
One of the things I have to say is and I'm not saying this to blow smoke, okay, but one of the best decisions I think I made as a professional was to join the Art of Connection team, and to be part of that whole process of putting together these books of 365 days of quotes. Because what I've learned is I have connected with so many, like-minded, heart-centered individuals that have made such a difference in my own life. I mean, I've met some people who, whether or not they do the same kind of work I do or not, we learn so much from each other in various types of what people are doing. And so I spent, a good first portion of my career in independent duty. When I reported aboard my Navy ship, I was the only Navy journalist on board. So I ran 2 TV stations, radio stations, and all that stuff, and I did it by myself. I had nobody to compare myself to. Now, everybody else was doing other stuff, and I learned from them, but I had nobody to learn from, nobody I could gripe with. Nobody that I could bitch to. I didn't have that venting opportunity, because most of the people that were around me did not understand what I was facing, because they didn't understand my career path. And I find that when we do get together with others who might be like-minded, or maybe even, oh God, they could be considered a competitor. Oh no. But we find that we can learn from each other and grow together. And because we're on the same path, and we don't worry about whether or not who's going to get that dollar or not, but by helping each other grow, we succeed together. And that's what makes all the difference.
Well, and you brought up something, you just got me going, because I found as I've gotten older, there was this such things called power teams. You got to have a power team in this, that. And, what I found as I've grown older in life, the power team isn't necessarily, what we all do. A power team really starts to become, who we all are. And, yes. I seen, it's not necessarily about the socioeconomic,
demographics.
Yeah, the demographics of it all. It's actually the psychographics of it all that I found that really helped propel me. Because, when you come from that place of understanding, you can get many times to that place of growth, because sometimes, I love people who are different than me, but I also love people that are the same as me, because sometimes that sameness also creates reflection. And in that reflection, I can, find a place of growth. Now, one of the things that I think that really attracted me in our relationship that we have together, you actually summed it up with your quote in The Art of Connection. And I brought one of your quotes out, and it says, I don't need to blow out your candle to make mine brighter. Together our combined light can help each other eliminate the darkness for all. And, and I read that, and I brought that out today because it really is a compelling quote that makes me understand who you are. And, and for the people that read it and read the thought, they not only get to understand who you are, but they may see something of themselves in that quote. Tell us a little bit more about that quote and why does that matter to you?
Well, it resonates so much with me. And the reason why I came up with that is because, again, not everything is a competition. We need to be together, and together we can do so much. I go back to, and it's funny because where I started in this whole thing with Share Your Fire and where that came from, I used to watch old classic monster movies. Right. And in the monster movies, they would get the townspeople together and they all grab torches and go chase the monster away. Well, the torches, everybody thinks of the torches as because of the fire and being a weapon, but it wasn't. What the torches did was it brought light, because the things that we fear and the things that trouble us are the things that we don't understand, or the things that hide in the darkness. So the torches were there to bring light. And the more torches that were lit, the brighter it was. And so nothing can hide in that darkness. And that's where that comes from.
Yeah, no, I love that. John, before our segment ends here, I just wanted to get your feeling on the community of the Art of Connection and the value and the people that you've met in there. Oh my God. And, I always say the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again. But, in the same vein, the definition of a habit is doing the same thing over and over again as well. It's just having the discernment to know the difference. Tell us your thought on that.
The collaborations and the connections that I've made through the co-authors in the Art of Connection series has been probably the most beneficial in my personal as well as professional career. I've met so many wonderful people from all walks of life, from different types of career fields and from similar career fields. There are also speakers and coaches out there. But again, it's that like-mindedness, it's that heart-centeredness that brings us together. And I found that I have grown personally and professionally and found ways to work with people that I didn't think I could. And that's what makes the biggest difference for me. I love meeting people, learning from people, and then finding ways that we can help each other to expand. And so through the Art of Connection and the people that I met there, I was able to spread that joy to others around me as I've met more and more other folks. And through those people, I brought them into the Art of Connection community as well. And that's just continued to grow. And it's such a wonderful family.
You absolutely have. You have a fan club in me, and you've provided a fan club for all of us. And I want to say thank you for that, John. Again, I am with John Verrico. He's the owner and founder of Share Your Fire. He can be reached at john@johnverrico.com, or he can be called at 240-257-6373. John, thank you so much for
being on. And real quick, if people can't remember 6373, the acronym is NERD.
NERD, yes. So 240-257-NERD. You heard it here first on the, I feel like I was going to say the Art of Connection show. Thank you so much, John. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Robert. It's been great.
All right. Thank you so much, John. John Verrico, owner and founder of Share Your Fire. So glad you've been on the show today. Now I'm looking forward to our next guest. She's a first timer on the show. And we have Sylvia Baffour. Am I saying that right? I want to make sure.
Yes, you are. Yes,
I love it. I love it when I do something right. It's such an endorphin rush and everything. So I'm with Sylvia Baffour. She is the She is the owner and founder of Baffour International. And I put he, but she can be reached at info@sylviaspeaks.com, or you can call her at 703-675-3152. Again, that is 240-257-63. I'm sorry, looking at John's here. Let me get that over there again. Sorry, 703-675-3152. How are you doing today, Sylvia?
I am very well. How are you doing, Robert?
I am doing good. So you got to hear John and I, just chat for a little bit. And, John is like a regular on the show. I always love to have John on here because, for me, he shares, a ray of true, authentic positivity. And one of the things when I was, as I'm starting to get to know you a little bit better, I believe that you have that same essence inside of sharing that true, authentic value of positivity, but you also do it in a structured and measured way through something called emotional intelligence. And what I would like to do is just kind of ask you, because for some of us, we hear emotional intelligence often, but quite frankly, unless we chat GPT it or something, we really don't know what emotional intelligence is. Give us a definition of it, and how we apply it. We may not even know it each and every day.
Yeah, it's an interesting question I often get asked, and I have sort of a more hard to remember definition, and then maybe one that is much more succinct, and I hope I could share them both. So the more complex version is emotional intelligence is simply your ability to recognize and understand your own emotions and the emotions of those around you, and then use that awareness to guide your decisions and your interactions more effectively. But in the simplest way that we could define it, emotional intelligence is simply your ability to interact with other human beings. And think about all the behind the scenes stuff that goes on to effectively interacting with other humans. And that is emotional intelligence. So we do it every day without even realizing it, if you think about it,
Well, I think it's really kind of, interesting to me because I'm 60 years old now. And I can truly say when I was 15 years old, it wasn't like they taught emotional intelligence in school. I got to college and then, worked on my master's degree, and there still wasn't anything called EI. And now we're having to learn, what EI is and how to apply it. What do you think has kind of sparked the interest in EI, and what makes it so purposeful, especially for entrepreneurs to use in this day and age?
I mean, I think part of what sparked it is really the fact that we've become so connected digitally, in the last couple of decades, right? So it's this whole idea that we've never been more connected, and yet and never been more disconnected from each other. And I know you and John were talking about connection, right? And we all know that in order to really live a successful and happy life, we've got to have sustainable and meaningful connections with other human beings. And so emotional intelligence is the very skill set that allows us to exist in relation to one another, because we don't make it in this world on our own. We're not robots, and I once heard a quote from Jim Carrey, the comedian turned philosopher, if I could share this, that I think encapsulates why emotional intelligence has become so important in the last couple of decades. And he said, the effect you have on others is the most valuable currency there is. And I think that is so powerful. And more people realize that the crux of life is about your interactions with other human beings. And so it's not so much what's going on intellectually for you, because when we're being compared to others at the same skill levels as us, 58% of what helps us stand out most comes down to the emotional intelligence that we have. So,
and I love that. I was a computer programmer. I was a coder. I worked for really large companies, such as GoDaddy, Intuit, Realtor.com here in the United States. And, one of the things I feel like, we've replaced the personal connection with each other with the keyboard and the keypad. And if you really think about it, so much of our energy is pouring into these little units, and it's almost like I always say we become where we spend our time. And we almost, for me, we need emotional intelligence because quite frankly, our fingers are always, going straight into our keypad or our keyboard. Would you kind of agree with that, or do you think there's something else to this?
No, I think it's a great way to visualize it, right? That energetically, that's where so much of our energy goes, and it doesn't always serve us, right? I think we have to sort of scale back and have that awareness of when we are too much in the digital world and not enough in sort of the human connection world. And so, I often talk about the fact that emotional intelligence is not a skill set that you need when your life is perfect and your relationships are firing on all cylinders. It's that skill set you need for those uncomfortable, inconvenient, and challenging moments of your life.
And I'm glad that you brought that up. One of the things I always tease entrepreneurs about, I have this saying that says, "What good is personal development if you're never going to use it?" And so because a lot of us we study personal development, we know it from the mindset, but quite frankly, a lot of the time we don't get it from the heart set. And I say, before you can work on your mindset, you really got to work on your heart set, because it's that subconscious, or that even deeper, place in your heart, that's the vibration and energy that makes everything come alive. Would you agree with that, or are there even more things that we should be thinking about when it comes to EI?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with that. And it actually piggybacks on an idea, really dispelling a myth. One of the biggest myths about emotional intelligence is that because you have high self-awareness, you are highly emotionally intelligent. And that is not the case, because what good is it for me to be very aware that I cut people off in conversation if I don't then take the steps and the action of doing something about that, right? So I can be very aware that I'm someone who cuts people off in conversation. That doesn't make me emotionally intelligent, right? And so
Right.
It is. So I often say that in order for our emotional intelligence skills to really work for us, in order for them to be active and effective in our lives, they must come out of our heads, off the pages of books, and with us into the streets of our lives every day. And so I talk a lot about street EI, as I like to. That's sort of my brand of emotional intelligence. Is if it's not accessible and practical, if you're not using it, then what good is it?
And I love that, because I use that with the word authentic. We talk about being authentic, and sometimes we make things too simple. And I'm like, it's great that you're authentic, but you're also an asshole. So how good, you're an authentic asshole. How does that help me? And I think sometimes we have to look at things, and we have to provide proper context when we're using them. And so much of the time when we learn through sound bites and we YouTube everything, or we chat GPT everything, we're really not getting depth, or we're really getting a shallow, bedspread of the more depth that actually, we should have when we look at the context of the overall, connection, feelings, knowledge, emotion that we're transferring each other. Sylvia, I bring up context because, I went through the Art of Connection book, and again, in this book, it's 365 days of abundance. And one of the things that, a lot of people don't know is abundance is actually really three words that came together to make one word. In A, of all alphabets, is the highest level or highest letter of the alphabet, the A. It's like the spiritual letter of the alphabet, and B and C and D are follow that. The last part is dance. That is the radiance of a community, coming together and creating an energy that they wouldn't have otherwise. But there's that little part named bun. And, and this is like proper context. And bun is something that is tightly knit. And we think about bun, we think about something we eat, or we think about, do it in your hair. But the original context of bun was, it was, the highest level of interconnected communal energy. And that's what the true word abundance is. And when I saw your quote is, the questions you ask yourself shape the path to your potential. And what I'm saying is, for us truly to be able to express ourselves, we truly need to understand the context for which it comes from, don't we?
Absolutely. Yeah. And yes, I mean, sort of just going off of the quote, and the quality of questions we're asking ourselves and how that invites abundance into our world. And I often talk about that most of us default to asking what I call barricading questions, the questions that are why did I not get this? Why was I denied that promotion? Instead of using what I call gateway questions, which really open the gates to forward thinking, questions that begin with how and what. So instead of the, why didn't I get the promotion?
Word gateway questions, that offers a whole new illumination.
Yeah, it does, because you visually see it, right? It's opening the gates to abundance and abundant thinking. And, so what can I do creatively to present my ideas for greater impact, instead of why don't people listen to me when I share my ideas, right? Very, very different notions.
Because one of the things I think emotional intelligence does, and I'm building from John, and I'm going with you, Sylvia, and to get on to Ira. And I feel like there's a place that entrepreneurs, there's another art form that we're missing out there. And I call it the art of interesting. How can we create ourselves in such a way that we're very interesting? People always ask me, they're like, because look, I put on hundreds of speakers on my stages each and every year. And invariably, what people always ask me, they always ask me like, well, how come they're so good, or what makes them have it? And I tell them, quite frankly, the it factor is the interesting factor. They do the very things, physically, emotionally, mentally, the messaging, that creates the it factor. And that it factor is they've made themselves interesting to others, because it's that interestingness that makes me want to lean in and listen, right? And I think that emotional intelligence is such a part of that, because a lot of it just happens in the moment, right? I mean, you got to be there with them, don't you?
Absolutely. Yeah. You've got to be present, but the backdrop of that as well, thinking about connection and being the kinds of people others want to be around. I often share this saying that, in your interactions with others, do people crave your presence, or do they crave your absence? And if you're going to be present with people, you've got to be mindful about being interested in others, and not just being sort of self-focused.
Yeah, and one of my favorite poets and authors is Maya Angelou. Love her as well. And you look to her as maybe being someone who's either inspirational or motivational, or maybe even mentoring in a way. Tell us about the relationship from her spirit that you identify with, and why does it resonate so much?
Yeah, she has such a special place in my heart, because I had the opportunity to spend 13 years, sort of with her at her feet at times, sort of learning from her. And, where I feel like we're deeply connected, and it's especially in the work I'm doing now, more so since her passing. I sort of lament that she's not. I guess she's here, and sort of seeing what I'm doing
you're
now.
You're bringing her here.
Yes, that is.
In many ways.
I love that, and I'm feeling that in that presence, and the saying that she's known by, that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but they'll never forget how you made them feel.
Yeah.
And so much of my time and my days are spent now being really mindful of that third part of that quote, right? People never forget how we make them feel, and I call it your emotional aftertaste. And I think about how I can influence that positively at every turn. So I definitely still feel connected to her, not just through the memories of time I had with her, but just through the words of wisdom that live timelessly through her work,
Yeah, and I love that you call that the emotional aftertaste. I in many ways, I call it the emotional product that you take away with you. Because I believe in certain ways, if we understand our emotions, and we kind of, have an understanding of packaging them, in such a way that, and I'm not saying, like a package, like you go to Target and you pick it off the shelf, but the packaging, are we understanding that all the emotions that we really are gifting to someone else can either help or hurt? And if we start looking at, our emotions as such ways that they can be gifts, or, they can actually be, something other than gifts, it could be like, someone depositing in their own bank and not yours. I think that we may start to have another understanding, or a relationship with our own emotions. And I think that that's where you come in, is you help people, come along and start understanding that the emotions that they have with others, you know, are more than just the relationship. They're the impact. And I think that that's what you do through your AI. And I love the gateway, you know, that you said as well, because it's that gateway, because gateways are meant to be open, aren't they?
Absolutely.
You know?
Yes. Yes.
So
Yeah.
I, you know, you and I, we're going to get on a show again, and we're going to talk more about this, because I am really so happy
I would
that
love
you're on
that.
here today. And I love that you're in the book, The Art of Connection, because to me, you know, the connection is the beginning of that journey. But, you know, looking at like even a building that's built, every building has a cornerstone. And to me, if you have the connection started right, it is the cornerstone to everything that occurs afterwards. Again, I am with Sylvia Baffour. She's the owner and founder of Baffour International. She can be reached at info@sylviaspeaks.com. That's info@sylviaspeaks.com. Or you can call her at 703-675-3152. Sylvia, thank you so much for being on the show. I appreciate you, and I appreciate your time today.
Thank you. Thank you, Robert.
Wow. I mean, so cool talking with Sylvia Baffour today of Baffour International. Thank you so much. And next, we have another first time radio show guest. He's coming on right now, and he is Ira Koretsky, and he is the chief storyteller. Ira, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Robert. Great to be here.
Good. I'm glad to have you here. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Last night was my finals for my class. I teach at the University of Maryland. So that was a long day from 7 to 8 p.m.
Ooh, yeah.
Today's a little more relaxing, and I was looking forward to spending the time with everybody here today.
Oh, well, I appreciate you coming on. Everyone, I'm with Ira Koretsky. He is the owner and founder of The Chief Storyteller. He can be reached at Ira at thechiefstoryteller.com or call 202-276-9199. Again, that's 202-276-9199. And, you know, maybe it's my programming background in me, Ira, but I love to repeat the things because I just want to make sure every transcriber out there gets my words so they transcribe it right. So when they hear you, they can find you. So that's why I love to repeat the information over and over again. So thank you. So I remember the first time when John Verrico introduced us through, like, I think it was like email or something. He's like, I have the chief storyteller, Ira Koretsky's looking at becoming a part of the Art of Connection book series. And I read that and I go, the chief storyteller, there must be a story behind that. So if there is a story, would you be able to like kind of tell us how that came to be?
Sure. So it goes back to probably 24 years ago I started approximately. So I finished my MBA from the University of Maryland, and the internet tech startups, if you remember back then, were on fire. They could gain, $1 billion in a day just by sharing an idea. It was just insane. And I had already lived in Northern California before when I was in the Army at Fort Ord in Monterey. I just loved the area. I had finished my MBA and I wanted to move back, and many of the hot internet startups were out there. So I landed a job and moved back, and then 9/11 happened shortly after me being there. The internet tech bubble, it popped, if you remember, and boy, did it pop loudly. I can't even remember all the different, headlines in the newspaper, right? And so unfortunately, I lost my job. And my friend Jeremy said, "Hey, you're smart. Why don't you start your own business?" Now, Jeremy, to this day, I make fun of him. It was well-intentioned, but it was absolutely terrible advice because I knew nothing about how to start a business. Nothing. I didn't have intellectual property, no elevator speech, no processes, no frameworks. I remember an event I went to, and the guy said my presentations were boring, and I walked away, and I never even asked him for his phone number. I just didn't have the skills to run a business. And now, fortunately, 23 years later, here I am. I'm the chief storyteller. I didn't start off with this name either. Used to be my last name, Koretsky Communications, not very memorable. Met some great mentors, learned some things, right? And really built the business to what it is today over the last 23 years.
You know, it's funny. I always say, every day I learn a little bit more, and sometimes it just takes a little bit more to learn something every day. And, and you made me think about like the name of the company that I have is Entrepreneur Network. And previous to that was called Network Together. And, why network together? Because that's far more fun than networking apart.
Yeah.
And so, but what I've also found with Network Together is everyone can spell that. And so it's interesting because I put, networking and entrepreneur together for an entrepreneur, but no one could spell it. And so that meant like, it made it very hard for people to find us. And, one of the things that I look at and that you talk about is secret sauce. And one of the things is like, I too believe that every business has a story. It has a core story that's well defined within it. And many times entrepreneurs and business owners, sometimes what happens is they forget that core story and they forget what brought them to the place that made them successful. Talk about secret sauce. And in many ways, if we forgot, how do we bring the secret sauce back to our business so we can tell that story again?
The secret sauce, it's part of marketing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Secret sauce is something, as you alluded to, is that we don't solve their problems. They're being whoever it is, client, colleagues at the office, employees, whatever it is. You don't speak words that matter to them. And part of that is part emotion, the heart. You talk about heart, and then mind. And you have to me, if you look at anything out there, advertising dollars, everything goes through the heart, eventually to the head, where the head makes the decision. So you have to know how to get to the heart. And my secret sauce is what I call the better tomorrow message. How are you making your audiences, your clients, your colleagues, your bosses, people that you work for better? And when you focus on their challenge and their problems, you're going to change the way that you talk because it's going to be in their words. And so when you do that, that's really the secret. And it really comes down to messaging or positioning, if you're in the marketing parlance, the words you use, the body language that you communicate, the voice that you use to deliver comes together and it blends in such a way that wherever you are, you're able to communicate that core story. And it really comes down to that combination, like I said, of the heart and the mind. And when you get that, most people don't. I mean, think about it. How many stories do you remember? How many commercials do you remember? How many times has something actually touched you from when you were a little kid that you can remember today? Very, very few. When you get to the heart of those issues, which is solving a problem, something that you're touching. I mean, that's what I'm teaching, right? At all the people that I work with, and my students have just spent the last 4 months with me, and their final is a 5-minute TED Talk. And it's got to be something personal, and we got to learn something from them. And there's 65 students that, march up and they do their 5 minutes, but it has to be meaningful, and you can see it, you can feel it in the audience.
Yeah. And that brings something up that I like to talk about all the time, especially when it comes to, messaging. And you brought up messaging. Mm-hmm. And so many times, business owners and speakers and authors, et cetera, they're in the same mix. What are they doing? They're attempting to convey something to create impact. And one of the places that they fail, it's not that they don't have something that's impactful. I like to say that they fail in the method to get to the messaging. they fail in the build of creating a proper message that's going to create that instantaneous impact for someone to be engaged and follow. Would you agree that most people don't put enough time in the methodology behind their message to get out there to create impact?
Robert, I had a client once. He would practice important presentations on the car ride. So he had a half hour to practice a presentation that could be worth double-digit millions of dollars. I couldn't do anything about it. I had to prepare him as best as I could. So there's nothing I could do to change that. And what I've come to realize, when people come to me for, as a prospective business, to me provide coaching or training or workshops or whatever, I have to figure out, how do I accommodate myself to their style? And if they're completely reticent to do at least some practice, it will be a failure. So you have to do some, otherwise, the most common refrain I get from people is, my stories suck, or I'm terrible at public speaking.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to proverbial slap them and go, no, they don't. You don't spend time on the messaging. You don't practice. And I don't know if it's a phobia. I don't know if it's whatever it is. All those statistics, it's the number one fear. I don't know whether or not that's absolutely true, but I can tell you anecdotally tons of stories about this. So yes, I'm in a billion% agreement that people don't spend the time that they need.
And the other thing too is Ira, you got to help me here. You got to help me get this out there. The other thing that speakers always ask me there, what creates a great speaker? Is it how I use my hands? Is it how I utilize my voice? Is it, the way I do clever little tokens out into the audience? And basically I tell them, well, the best speakers are the ones that actually have something worthwhile to say. I say, work on what you're work on what it is that you're trying to convey, and everything else becomes a lot easier. Would you agree with that as well?
Again, we're in such violent agreement. So I have something that I call the system of credibility. And in the center, it's a circle. It's 3 circles. It could be more circles. But in the center is what's called, as I mentioned, the better tomorrow message. What's the feeling you want to evoke in your audience? That could take 6 months, depending on the size of the organization. But most of the time, it's probably more like 2.5, 3, because I'm getting at the core of what you want to say and what you, more importantly, should be saying to resonate. And in the second circle is all the things that you have that are primary, that are going to connect. Is it LinkedIn? Is it YouTube? Is it your podcast? Is it the video blogs? Whatever the mechanisms that you're going to do to be engaging. And then in this third circle would be the things that are secondary, less important, but still important to you as your system of credibility. Like, it's people want to jump right in and be that speaker, right? And they want to wow people and get the standing ovation. Like you said, you have to figure out what that better tomorrow message is. Like when I started, I didn't have one. When I became the chief storyteller, people thought that was my moniker. No, that's my business.
Yeah.
But if you type in, if I could brag for like 2 seconds, if you type in chief storyteller, I'm coming up first on any non-sponsored search. I've spent 2 decades plus working my craft so that my message can be memorable. And it works, and it works for me personality wise, and works for my audience.
Well, and so now I'm going to be violently, agreeable with you. I've never heard violently agreeable, but I'll take it. I'll be like, wow.
I did not invent that, so you're welcome to use it.
Yeah. That just kind of like, okay, it's like, which one of these is not like the other, but I'll take it, and that, for me, that is so important. I say sometimes, here's another thing that speakers do, they want to be educational. They want to be informational when we've already used, the word impact. And I tell people this all the time, especially speakers. I say, you know what? I tell you what, learn how to be memorable. Because let me tell you something, if you educate them to the point, but they don't remember you, you just educated your audience to find someone else to get the business that you should have had. Because it's so important to, if you create the genesis of thought to be remembered for that thought. Would you agree with that as well, Ira?
Absolutely. Should I not say the phrase again?
Say it again.
Yeah, I'm a big fan, like you are, of repetition. I teach various figures of speech, and one of my favorites are figures of repetition. In the class and the delivery. Yes, I'm again, we're totally in agreement. Most people that are new to public speaking want a shortcut, and I truly believe there is no shortcut. You could get knowledge, right? They could speak to somebody like you or me or Sylvia or John and pick our brains. But unless you're in the trenches and you're on stage and you've had things blow up, and like I did one event and I always ask, are you going to have audio and visual? Absolutely. I showed up, no visual, no audio, besides, like me.
Yes.
So my videos that I show, I'm very big on showing examples for everything that I do, gone. But because I'm experienced, I can go through my slides and chop them out and no one will know.
Yeah.
But there are no shortcuts.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
And here's one other thing, and then I want to get into your quote. I tell people a lot of the time, AI is making mediocrity of us all. That's what in many ways what's happening is we're going out there to become the world's best average, to be able to speak to the world's best average, to look like an expert and have no mastery at all. And and that's what I love what you say. Because at the end of the day, it's only the experimental part. It's the practice part of the human individual that goes out there and just does it. They're the ones that actually get the hours, by putting in, and then they're getting out. And what I love that you wrote in your quote for the book In the Art of Connection is you wrote in your quote, people who like to dream big help other people to dream big. And I think that sometimes, that's what, coaching can be. That's what really a great story writer can be. That's what a great copywriter, that's what a great trainer does. It creates the space. It opens up the space for something greater than the person themselves can see. Tell us a little bit more about your quote and why it resonates with you so much and why you want the world to read it.
So I went on a date. What year was this? 2003, I think. Yeah. It was her idea to take me to improv. So if you've ever seen Whose Line Is It Anyway, or Thank God You're Here.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So that's what she took me to. I have always wanted to do stand-up. I, honest to goodness, cannot remember the jokes. I'll put the punchline first. I'm terrible at delivering memorized jokes. Improv allows you to bring in style and personality, expertise, and catering to the audience and having fun and interacting. I fell in love. Fast forward, I'll skip all the details. I made the team and I started performing, ironically, on April Fool's Day 2004. I did about 12 years and about 1,000 shows. And what this quote is a business application of improv's yes and. And if people aren't familiar with yes and, it is a concept where you build upon people. So rather than saying, for example, if I were to say, Robert, do you like snow? And you say, no, you stopped me, you blocked me. That's the phrase we use in improv. You could say something like, I do, I love to eat, or I like to visit places, rather than maybe I was going to talk about skiing. I'm not a snow guy. I like more temperate fall weather. But what I do is I'll change the conversation to be about something that you and I can both talk about.
Yeah.
Like, what do most skiers like to do? They like to travel. So what we become is building yes on. It's leapfrogging, not quite leapfrogging, but it's yes and, yes and, yes and. And so the quote is the same kind of thing. I want to be surrounded with people that make me better.
Yeah, I love that. So well, and for those of you, I'm a parent, 4 kids. Once I learned the and, boy, it helped me with my relationship with my kids too. So I just wanted to put that out there for those who are parents. Again, I am with Ira Koretsky. He is the owner and founder of The Chief Storyteller. He can be reached at ira@thechiefstoryteller.com. Again, that's Ira at thechiefstoryteller.com, or you can call him at 202-276-9199. Again, that's 202-276-9199. Ira, thank you for being this part of the segment. What I'm going to do now is we're about at the end of the show, and I'm going to bring John Verrico and Sylvia Baffour together, and we will all get to just, do a few takeaways, of each other and kind of give some final comments and final words for our audience out there. And so, John and Sylvia, all right. I mean, you guys, we're at the end. Can you believe it? Oh, my goodness.
I'm so sad.
I know. I feel like it's a Carol Burnett show. I'm so glad we had this time together. So John, just a few thoughts on the show, with Ira and Sylvia.
Yes, and
yes, and
I always love the time that I get to spend with Ira and Sylvia. I've been fortunate to have known them for a little while. Sylvia a little less long than I've known Ira, and of course with you, Robert.
That's called the less and.
Yeah. Well, I had to laugh when Sylvia said earlier, do people crave your presence or crave your absence? I'm like, oh, that is so deep and so amazingly illuminating. But and also, when you and Ira were talking, and when Ira said that he is in violent agreement, I'm like, I love that. I'm going to have to steal that too.
Yeah.
And I'm glad to know that you did not coin that phrase, Ira, so that I can use it without having to pay you a commission.
Thank you, John. And Sylvia, just some thoughts of you on the show, and Ira and John.
Yeah, I think it's, one, I feel privileged to be on the show with such esteemed human beings, and love that we're all in the art of connection together. And so what I take away mostly is how each of the things we talked about are so deeply intertwined with the idea of connection, right? We get back down to, we are hardwired for this. It's what we're on this earth to do, is to have those meaningful connections. And listening to John and hearing how Ira is, weaving the importance of storytelling into, we think about the people we want to be most connected to are the ones who are telling good stories and making us feel good through the translation of life through their words, So it's been a pleasure to spend time with all of you, and just excited.
Agreed. I agree. And Ira, I'll have you give a takeaway that you found from the show and from John and Sylvia.
Yes. So I actually made some notes. John, I'm a big fan. I loved his phrasing about connection. I can't remember exactly what he says, but I know it was all about connection and doing things with others. So I really like that. What's so funny?
You said you took some notes, and I don't remember what you said. I'm like,
no. I do remember the concept.
I know. I'm starting. I'm starting to see, John, that Ira truly is in the military intelligence camp, like you and me. Wow.
You know what? I've known John, I don't know, 10, 12 years.
Something like that. Yeah.
I deserve it. I got it. Okay. So
I'm sorry, Ira. I couldn't resist that.
I'm going to change my words and say I don't remember anything about John.
You gave that to me in an improv, so I just
I did. I'm fine. And then I laughed when you just said that. I wrote down, do people crave your presence or people crave your absence? So, yes. So I'm in violent agreement with that one.
Oh, my. Yeah.
And also, one of the ways that I always end my presentations generally is with the Maya Angelou quote. And it's kind of funny. My wife, when we were dating, might have been a fiance by then. I let her come to one of my workshops. She wanted to come. And I ended with a Maya Angelou quote. She goes, "Did you get that approved, or did you verify that?" And I went, "No." She says, "You better." I said, "No, I don't want to, because if she didn't say it, then I wouldn't be able to use it." This was back in like 23 years ago, something like that, when she was on Oprah Winfrey. So I probably spent 4 hours writing an email that was about 70 words to her agent, something like, "Dear agent, blah, 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 blah. Did Dr. Angelo write this? And she wrote back, yes, that was it.
That's all you needed.
And then I was safe. And I probably used that as an ending to 500 presentations.
Yeah. I quote that all the time too, because that is the most important thing in life. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Our impact on others is the most important thing in the world. And people will always remember how you made them feel. And that is what our legacy is. It's not our stuff. It's about what we'll be remembered for, and we'll be remembered for how we made people feel around us. Which is why I love this group that I've surrounded myself with here.
And I wanted to add something to that, because I read the book, like the 7 wonders of the world, but they were the 7 wonders of the world when it came to people. And in the book, it talked about feeling, and I say a lot of the time, people don't necessarily believe what they hear. They don't believe what they read. They barely believe what they see, but they always believe what they experience, because the experience which allows feelings is the only thing that's real to any of us. And I will never forget that. And that's what I feel, Ira, John, and Sylvia, that's what you brought here today. You brought the feeling of an experience and created it in such an immersive way that it created an effect for me. So I want to thank you all for being on the show today. I appreciate you. I love you. I am grateful that you're in the Art of Connection book and we're all together. And to me, we are the ones that are creating impact. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, guys.
You've been watching the iNetrepreneur Show, a production of the iNetrepreneur Radio Network with host Robert W. Jones. Join Robert each week as he visits with new and exciting guests who inspire, teach, and mentor entrepreneurs worldwide. Follow Robert each Thursday at 1:30 p.m. Pacific, 4:30 p.m. Eastern, and 8:30 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time.